welcome. I'm Jade of Jaded Reader, and today I am doing my August wrap-up. In the month of August, I read a total of 6 books, and I'm going to share with you 5 out of those 6 books in detail about how I felt about it and my star rating for it. The 6th book I'm actually going to have a separate video for, so stay tuned to get more information on that. If you have any questions about my star system, I do have my super subjective star system down below, so you can understand what a 1-star or a 5-star means to me. I will be doing this in ascending order, meaning I start with my least amount of stars all the way up to my 5-star reads. First up is a book I no longer have physically because I got rid of it as soon as I was finished with it, and that is Shadow and Flame by Mindy Arnett. Shadow and Flame is the second in a duology by Mindy Arnett, the first one being Onyx and Ivory, which I loved very, very much. This was one of my most highly anticipated reads, and I am so disappointed in how it turned out. I'll go ahead and give the synopsis of Onyx and Ivory, but if I'm being really candid, I have to say I'm not sure what the 2 storylines really have to do with each other, so I would almost suggest cutting your losses at Onyx and Ivory and reading it as a standalone. Onyx and Ivory follows Kate, who is known as Traitor Kate, as her father is known to be the one who tried to assassinate the king. Kate was childhood friends with the Prince Corwin. After a really awkward moment where her father tried to assassinate his father, they quite obviously split ways. Now, Onyx and Ivory is about a conspiracy that's going on. There's magic and dragons, specifically drakes are featured in this. I talk about it in my Draconic Reads video. I was really staggeringly impressed with how Onyx and Ivory turned out, and the cliffhanger ending left so much room for storyline that I could not wait to. And then I received Shadow and Flame. And I'm so upset. First off, Shadow and Flame takes place after the cliffhanger is solved. There, at the end of the first book, you have an uprising happening. Things are going down. There is prominent side plot in the first book that also has a cliffhanger that is not anywhere addressed in the second book. And to put it lightly, this entire plot was a mess. I kept wanting to DNF it, but I figured I must still be able to get my answers even if it wasn't the way I wanted them. Once I was able to accept the fact that I was going to miss the climactic moment that I had been anticipating. However, these new characters were being treated without introduction like I should have already known them, and then they would like name drop like what they meant to the main character in that 2 years that I didn't get to read about. It just created a lot of unimportant moments that made the plot drag so long. I thought this book would never end, and then it would pick up in weird spots, and much like this review, it was just all over the place. The relationship sucked, there was false tension, I ended up finding it convoluted, tiresome, and boring. And to top it all off, guys, there's barely any drakes. While they do have a quick moment in this book, it's not, I would say, a important moment, it's not a prominent moment, and it doesn't have really anything to do with the plot, and so I would give the drake quality in this an honorable mention. Because everything else in this book was so disheartening to me, the middle part where it had a little bit of political intrigue and a possible romance, sort of, it was an interesting part of the story. I was able to glean that little moment out of it where I truly did find something in this book interesting, but I really had to pick it out, and when I was racking my brain for the redeeming qualities in this book, that's all I could pull up. With that, I gave Shadow and Flame by Mindy Arnett a 2 out of 5 stars. I don't really recommend it, but I recommend Onyx and Ivory so much that I don't know quite what to do now. Moving on! I also read Blackbird, a graphic novel by Sam Humphries and Jen Bartel. This is possibly one of the prettiest graphic novels I've ever read. Truly, brushing through these pages, you just see these stunning pictures. The beginning of each chapter is honestly quite chilling, and I was incredibly happy to just read this without words, which brings me to the only part of this book that I did not enjoy, which was the dialogue. The dialogue is rudimentary, I would say. Juvenile, rudimentary, very simplistic, very unnatural. It kept the plot going so as that I knew what was going on, but honestly, I might have been happier with hand gestures and facial expressions. The things that they say in this are so like dorky and like awkward. I just really had a hard time reading the dialogue, so I did rush through. However, the plot for this, despite the dialogue, is really unique and intriguing. I am going to pick up the next of this book in the hopes that this author does get better at figuring out his characters and what he wants them to do, because I just did not want to put put it down. I just wanted it to keep getting better and better. Dialogue aside, I found myself entertained the entire time. The summary to Blackbird I'm going to have to keep simple because there are quite a few twists and turns in this storyline. You have our main character Nina, who has a vision right before an earthquake when she's a young teenager. She tries to warn her family, however her family does not react until the earthquake is already underway. The earthquake works as a catalyst to start off this entire plot, and it changes Nina's life forever. Nina, following her intuition, never gives up on her visions and what she believes she saw the night of the earthquake, and spends the remaining of her high school years trying to find the connections that led to mysterious disappearances, visions, and mythical creatures showing up at her door. This book is packed full with magic and just these beautiful, outlandishly gorgeous creatures. I just am so interested in this world. I'm giving Blackbird a 3 or 3.5 out of 5 stars, as I really did enjoy so much about this book, but I do believe that it can do better. So with hopes for improvement, I'm very excited to pick up volume 2 in Blackbird. Next up, this was a buddy read I had with Ola Quinn, and it was The Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. Wicked Fox was such a cool book, and I'm so glad that I got to enjoy reading it with Ola Quinn. We had such great discussions about the character dynamics and the romance in this book, and I am happy to say that Wicked Fox is brimming with culture and food and locations featured in Seoul, Korea, and I could not get enough of it. I was armed with a glossary in the back to help me with some Korean dialogue and a really fun mixture of fantasy and contemporary that made up The Wicked Fox. So in The Wicked Fox, you have Ji-hoon and Mi-young. So Mi-young is a nine-tailed fox, also known as a gumyo, which in this case means that she feeds off of people's essence and their liver in order to survive. This isn't like a succubus where she needs to have sex in order to survive, and it's not like a kitsune where she has to play tricks in order to get what she wants. She is able to have charm and charisma that follows her around, and things just kind of fall into Gumyo's laps. Because she is a half Gumyo, she also has a lot more humanity, and it allows them to click quite quickly as the storyline begins. Within a Gumyo is a bead. It's kind of like their life essence, and where they store what is essentially, I believe, like their souls. So if a Gumyo's soul is possessed by anyone else, then they can easily be controlled. Mi-young, being a teenager with a very intense parent, goes out on her own and makes some choices that leads to her bead possibly being lost. I absolutely loved the character dynamics in this book. I adored the relationship that grew between Ji-hoon and Mi-young, both platonic and romantic elements that just felt really sweet and nice and lovely. I actually was very intrigued by the relationship between Mi-young and her mother, as Mi-young's mother has quite a few layers and dynamics to her as well, and just getting to watch these characters interact with some elements of drama happening was incredibly compelling. Now, the cons for this book, because this was not a 5-star read for me, was the fact that there was a lot of martyrdom. A lot of the characters I felt spent quite a bit of time being upset or trying to sacrifice themselves instead of looking into other alternatives that might have been less drastic or maybe had a little bit more self-preservation. Everyone was willing to put themselves forward in the situation, and it just made for a lot of martyrs all in one place. While these characters were indeed lovable, there was quite a bit of lying that went on, and one of my favorite characters in the story did end up telling one of the main characters to lie and that it was totally okay. I completely disagreed, and I knew that it was supposed to be like a very wise, sweet moment that I just wasn't jiving with. In my personal opinion, I don't think that lying to preserve a relationship usually works out to the relationship's benefit. That's really all I can say about The Wicked Fox. I enjoyed it. The glossary in the back was super useful. You can both use it if you would like to learn more about Korean culture. Most of the Korean words were used in a context that I felt wasn't too overwhelming, and I ended up giving The Wicked Fox 4 out of 5 stars. Then up next I have Fence Volume 1 by C.S. Picot and Joanna the Mad. I am just going to assume that's her name because that is what is written on her graphic novel. This is the first volume in a new series that I cannot wait to continue. If you are a lover of fencing, I can tell you for sure that this cover is not clickbait, and you will be happy to find fencers inside of this novel. You'll also find a lot of LGBTQ+ rep. Specifically, this is an all-boys boarding school that features openly gay relationships, as well as being able to dress in very gender-fluid ways. I found that this was a really light, enjoyable read that also had some intensity to it. I read this for the 24-hour readathon, very impromptu, was put together by Rachael Marie, myself, and Riley Marie as co-hosts, and we had such a good time, and this was my first read of the 24 hours, and it really set the pace for the rest of my reading experience. To give a brief synopsis, you have our main character, Nicholas, who is trying to be a fencer, but due to raising himself himself and not having enough income, it's hard for him to get ahead like many of the other boys that are fencing in his same league. He does end up getting a scholarship to an all-boys boarding school, and he has the chance to join the fencing team. This entire story has the tournament trope where you have several rounds happening within the story to see if Nicholas indeed gets in. Nicholas's rival is featured on the cover. This is Seiji. He has a very affluent background along with plenty of fencing training to boot. He is known to be the best in his school. However, Nicholas has definitely gotten under his skin, and the rivalry between them only gets intensified when they end up being roommates. Overall, I ended up giving Fence a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I felt that it was a little short. I wanted more, which is not a bad thing, but I have heard that they actually get better from here, so I'm leaving some room to grow with my star rating, and I very much so enjoyed this graphic novel. And now for my 5-star read, my baby of the month. I had been anticipating this book forever, and you guys are probably still anticipating it too. I unfortunately had to send this book back. However, I really appreciate Madison from Princess of Paperback letting me loan this, and it was A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer. So A Heart So Fierce and Broken is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling that gets rid of all of the obnoxious things that you may not like about Beauty and the Beast and retells it with a fantastic main character, Harper, who is stubborn, bold, feisty, and my goodness, practical. I absolutely loved Harper in the first book, and I do find it important to let you know that in A Heart So Fierce and Broken, Harper is not a main perspective, although I really do love the perspectives given. It was very hard for me as Harper is all of the things I mentioned before. I know that she was also important as she had cerebral palsy, and her representation is not often featured in young adult novels. I thought it was important to let you know that she was not a point of view in this story. However, Harper is indeed included in this story. Her story is still very important, and I have very high expectations for the third book, hopefully featuring Harper once again. So with that being said, A Heart So Fierce and Broken still blew my mind. The storyline in this jutted off in a place I never saw it going, and I didn't think I was going to believe in, and here I am at the end giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. Now, because this is an arc, I do feel it is due more of a review than a regular sequel. I am going to put a timestamp right here in case you do not want spoilers for A Curse So Dark and Lonely, as the summary for this book, of course, is going to give some things away. This is your timestamp. I will also put one in the description down below, so you can just skip forward past my summary of this book and on to my final thoughts. So Heart So Fierce and Broken takes place almost immediately after A Curse So Dark and Lonely. It starts off with Gray, who is officially on the run, and he has found a place where he can do intensive labor and stay under the radar, as Prince Ren is still indeed looking for the heir to the throne. Now, the second perspective we have featured is Liamara. Liamara is a new perspective to the storyline, though her mother was definitely featured in the first book. Liamara is the princess that is currently at war with Ren's kingdom. While Liamara is the oldest in her family, she is not the heir to the throne, as her sister has been proven to be more brutal and callous than Liamara, and so therefore is given the status to heir of the throne. Liamara is put in a really precarious position, as Liamara believes in peace and trying to come up with an understanding. This obviously does not clash well with her mother's principles or perspective. In a twist of events, you end up with Liamara trying to create a peace for her kingdom, and Gray trying to battle with whether he is actually supposed to be the one that is on the throne. I won't say any more past that, because that should be enough to get you going, and I didn't see where it was going past that, and I'd really like for you to all have the same experience, which was, whoa, what the heck. By the end of the book, I was happy to say we had beautiful fat representation as well as strong female characters and a very beautiful and complex sister dynamic that I did not know I was going to get and was definitely pleased to have. So then I of course gave A Heart So Fierce and Broken 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait for it to come out so I can read it all over again, and I cannot believe that I have to wait to read it all over again and then wait again to read the third one. I have such a long time to wait, and I hope you guys pick it up and enjoy it, because it was an absolutely fantastic use of my time. And finally, I have a book that I'm not going to prominently feature in this wrap-up because I will have an individual review coming out this Friday. I have The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen. The Merciful Crow is going to take you by storm. If you are choosing to read this book, I suggest making it possibly your singular read, as it can be quite intense and overwhelming to get into. However, I really did end up enjoying The Merciful Crow. I do have quite a few things in it that I'd like to talk about further. There are so many little little details and cultural things, as well as colloquialisms and how they speak, that I just really could not fathom putting everything I felt and thought and felt you might want to know before reading this book, that I needed to give it its own review. As soon as the review is posted, I will have a link up above. And that is my last read of the month. It was a slow month for me, but I really was just trying to get back on track with both my reading and booktube, and I felt like this month overall was quite successful. I hope that you enjoyed this wrap up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below, and I hope you are enjoying the sun or more stars wherever you are, and until next time, bye! I mean, I don't... What was the redeeming quality again? No! No, I did not forget her name. Whew. It is hot in here. So hot in here. That causes for Myung and Jihoon to click quite quickly. Oh, that's really... Click quite quickly. To quick. I should send that to my theater teacher. She would love that one. And it allows them to quick... Now I can't say the word click.